Ed Schiller lay dead in his Nissan Maxima in a parking garage off a busy street in Newton, Mass. Just 2 weeks before the murder, Newton, an affluent suburb of Boston, had been named the safest city in America for the second year in a row. There wouldn't be a third. The question in Newton that day was who killed Ed Schiller and why? His brother Carl.
He wasn't really afraid of anybody.
Just minutes before the murder, Ed's cell phone showed he had spoken with his high school sweetheart, Stacy Rock. The two had started seeing each other again after a breakup that had lasted 10 years. During that time, Stacy had married, had 3 kids, but was now all but divorced. Recently, she had been quietly hoping their love affair would finally take them to this chapel near the historic Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Massachusetts. It was a postcard from the Wayside Inn that Stacy sent Ed that set in motion their rekindled love. On the back of the postcard were 2 words, White Flag, the title of their song.
I know I left too much mess and destruction to come back again.
Listen to the words. I know I caused too much destruction. I don't expect you to come back to me, but I just want you to know that I'm going to die loving you.
The postcard was Stacy's way of apologizing to Ed for their bad breakup years earlier. The Wayside was their place, where they took long walks near the inn's scenic watermill and later found refuge together in room number 9 at the top of the stairs.
But I wasn't trying to get him to come back to me. I just had to let him know my feelings for him and where I was and how I got there.
Judging by her high school yearbook dedication, Stacy always thought the place she would be was in Ed's arms and not in a marriage that wasn't working.
It was my senior quote, and I said, Ed, you were my world.
How did you not marry him?
Because as good as we were together, we didn't have it together.
You guys were just too young.
Yeah.
And so Ed went off to college. They drifted apart. When he returned to Boston, the two moved in together. But that didn't last. Stacy wanted more than Ed was prepared to give.
I always thought that I was supposed to be married and have children before I was 25, and he wasn't ready. Ed was free spirit.
And while working as a bartender at a country club, Stacy met Jim Brescia, a man 9 years older. He was engaging, and he had a career. A good-paying job at the defense technology giant Raytheon.
I thought maybe he would be more mature and ready to settle down, I guess.
2 months after they started dating, Stacy was pregnant. Were you upset, or did you think,
No.
This is what I wanted?
Oh, no, I was ecstatic.
Even though you weren't married to Jim?
I think he was stunned. He was very happy also.
But it wasn't long after the baby arrived that Stacy learned more about Jim. She describes him as a taskmaster who didn't appreciate her and was hardly ever home. He was controlling, she said, and selfish. And worst of all, he wasn't Ed Schiller. But Stacy wanted a man who came complete with a commitment. And in the end, she agreed to get more deeply involved with Jim.
I tried to love him. I just felt like he didn't love me. If I could just get him to love me, I could love him.
So this was somehow your fault?
Yeah. And honestly, I love my baby so much that I wanted more. I wanted a family.
Their wedding, ironically, was at the Wayside Inn Chapel, the romantic spot where she and Ed had spent so much time.
So still trying to pretend, trying to make him Ed, I guess, in a way.
Because the Wayside Inn was your place with Ed?
Absolutely. I regret that, using that place. I hated my wedding, by the way.
How long after that wedding did you realize you were with the wrong guy?
I knew I was with the wrong guy before I even got married.
But get married she did. 7 years and 3 kids later, Stacy was desperate to get away from Jim. What persuaded you that your marriage to Jim was finally over?
I was going crazy mentally. I felt like struck with fear constantly. And I was tired of feeling inadequate and unloved.
It was the fall of 2005. Stacy had filed for divorce before, but Jim talked her out of it. This time there would be no going back. While waiting for the divorce to be finalized, Stacy got a court order to get Jim Brescia out of the house. She started spending more time with Ed, and Jim hated that.
He didn't want anybody else around me or the kids. He felt that Ed was helping me, keeping me strong, which he was.
After learning about the bad divorce, Detective Duke Donahue thought a chat with Jim Brescia was in order, even though Brescia had been provably at work at around the time of Ed's murder. When the investigator asked Brescia if he could talk with him, Brescia wanted to know why.
I told him there had been a shooting this morning in Newton.
Did he say, and who got shot?
He did not. He said I had nothing to do with it.
That had to strike you as suspicious.
I would say so, sure.
Donahue had more questions to ask, but first, he had some digging to do. You went through his trash?
We did.
But what if they were going after the wrong suspect? Maybe Jim Brescia wasn't their man after all. Doesn't sound to me like the guy behind a murder-for-hire plot.
From his co-workers, he was an intense family man. He loved his children.
When Dateline continues.